It was just another rainy night in Forks, or at least it was supposed to be, a night like all the others in Forks. Foggy, silent, drowning in endless rain, but this one was different. Fundamentally different from anything that had ever happened before. Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez had opened a portal from Hueco Mundo into the world of the living. Not to invade it. Not after everything that had happened. After the battle between Ichigo Kurosaki and Yewok, Grimmjow's existence had shifted into something closer to a constant state of rivalry than destruction. A predator without a defined prey, and Forks had no idea it was about to become the stage for something impossible. The sky tore open. Reality itself felt like it was being compressed, then split apart, and from that rupture, Grimmjow stepped out in his usual Espada manner, slow, confident, like the world already belonged to him, unbothered, unrushed. Absolute certainty in every movement. Animals within a 1 kilometer radius reacted first. They ran. In panic, in instinctive recognition of something fundamentally wrong entering the ecosystem. A predator that did not belong in any natural hierarchy. Smaller animals, those with minimal spiritual presence, and too close to the point of emergence, didn't just collapse. They didn't die. They were erased from perception, as if their presence had been removed from the local map of existence itself. A localized disturbance in life response patterns, too sudden for normal biological interpretation. Grimmjow glanced around. Shh, this ain't Karakura town. Deep in the forest, Jacob Black suddenly opened his eyes. Every instinct in his body screamed the same thing. Something different had entered the field, a predator that didn't match anything he had ever encountered before. Inside the house of the Cullen family, Edward Cullen was experiencing something even his century-long existence had never properly prepared him for. He turned toward Alice, trying to speak, but he didn't even get the words out. Alice Cullen was already holding her head. Her voice was shaking. "What is that? What the hell is that?" he called out sharply. "Do you know who's in the forest? I can't read his thoughts. Maybe if we get closer." "No!" Alice snapped instantly. "Don't you dare go near that thing." For once, her optimism was gone. Emmett Cullen had been silent until now. A wide grin slowly formed on his face, the kind that usually meant violence was about to happen. "So, how strong is this guy?" Alice turned toward him, panic in her eyes. "You don't understand. It's more than that. Whatever it is, it causes distortions. Animals are dying near it." Edward's expression tightened. "So, it's a vampire with a highly resistant mental shield. Hunting animals like we do?" Alice shook her head immediately. "That's not a fucking vampire. We still have to go," Edward said. Emmett cracked his knuckles. "Good. I was starting to think tonight was gonna be boring." Grimmjow was walking through the forest when he felt them. Presences, closing in. "Beasts," he muttered. From between the trees, Jacob Black appeared, alongside Seth Clearwater and the rest of the pack. Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez glanced at them and smirked. "Ha, interesting. Big dogs." Jacob shifted back into human form. "This is Quileute pack territory. Identify yourself." Jacob Black narrowed his eyes, standing firm as Alpha. Grimmjow looked at him with genuine confusion, the first clear expression he had shown since arriving. "You were a dog 2 seconds ago. Dogs don't talk." Jacob clenched his teeth. Under normal circumstances, he would have attacked immediately. But now he was Alpha, responsible for the pack. Seth Clearwater shifted back into human form as well. Jacob, maybe he's lost, Seth said cautiously. Lost? Jacob snapped. Look at him. Grimmjow scratched his head. This place is weird. Then he looked at Jacob again. Hey, you seem like the informed one. Where is Karakura town? Jacob glanced at Seth. Karakura? Grimmjow shrugged. Forget it. He raised a finger and tried to open a portal back to Hueco Mundo. The space tore open halfway. A crack of unstable energy sparked out, then collapsed instantly. Grimmjow clicked his tongue in irritation. Shh. Perfect. This place has such weak spiritual pressure, I'm gonna have to actually try to open a gate. Jacob stepped forward, tense. What was that? What did you just do? Grimmjow sighed. You're starting to piss me off. Get lost. That was the moment. Before Seth could react, Jacob had already shifted and launched himself forward. But at just 10 meters away, he felt it. The air became heavy, oppressively heavy. At 4 meters, his body felt 3 times heavier, like gravity itself had been altered. But Jacob didn't stop. He was alpha. He could not show weakness. He never saw Grimmjow move. He only felt it. A sudden release of pressure lifted off his body, and in the next instant, Grimmjow was gone. When Jacob turned his head, Grimmjow was already 20 meters away. What the hell are you? Jacob growled. Then they arrived. Edward Cullen, Alice Cullen, Emmett Cullen, Jasper Hale, and Esme Cullen stepped into the clearing. Edward spoke first, calm but clearly alert. Jacob, is it hostile? Not yet, Jacob replied. Just arrogant. Grimmjow looked at the newcomers. Bount? No. Similar, but fundamentally different. Alice frowned slightly. Bount. Grimmjow then turned toward Edward, who was focusing intensely, trying to read his mind. Shh. Hey, can you stop pulling on the handle? The forest went silent. Edward blinked. What? Grimmjow smirked. Stop trying to read my mind. It tickles, Alice whispered. Shield. Edward shook his head slightly. No. Bella would notice if I tried. It wouldn't work anyway. He said my ability. He paused, confused. Tickles. Seth stepped forward carefully. Sir, Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez. Grimmjow, Seth continued. What brings you to Forks? Are you looking for something or someone? Grimmjow tilted his head. Forks? Then, a scream echoed through the forest. 4 nomadic vampires were hunting a group of teenagers. Edward's expression changed instantly. Nomads. We move. Now. Jacob looked at Grimmjow. Stay here. We're not done. Then the pack and the Cullens disappeared into the forest. Grimmjow stared toward the noise. A slow, sadistic smile formed. This place is starting to get interesting. And then, in a blur, he vanished. One of the nomads was holding a teenager by the throat. You've got so much life in you. Struggle. Fear makes the blood taste better. He never finished his sentence. His perspective shifted. One moment, he was looking at the victim. The next, his head hit the ground, still staring upward at the trees. Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez hadn't even drawn his blade. He crossed 2 kilometers in under 10 seconds using Sonido. The boy, shaken and alive, whispered, Thank you. Grimmjow stepped closer slightly. The boy immediately began losing consciousness. Even at 15 meters away, the pressure alone was crushing. Get lost. The teenager stumbled back, gasping, then ran into the forest. The remaining 3 vampires appeared, 2 women and 1 man. Bastard. One of the women screamed and rushed toward the remains of the first. 200 years he was with me. And you took him. Grimmjow didn't care about the emotional story. He struck her. She flew through one tree, then another, then another. At least 10 trees snapped in sequence from the impact. She stood again, then fled in the opposite direction. The other two tried to escape, but in a single motion, Grimmjow decapitated both. Moments later, the Cullens and the wolves arrived. They froze. The forest was destroyed. Bodies scattered. Silence. "What happened here?" Edward asked. "The idiot down there tried to eat a kid. Those two tried to run. The woman got away." Silence fell. Edward wasn't just shocked by the destruction. He was analyzing the bodies. Clean cuts. Precise. Not brutality. Execution. "How did you kill them?" Edward asked. "Can't you see?" Grimmjow replied. "I cut their heads off." Jacob looked at the corpses. They should still be active, but they're just empty shells. He looked at Grimmjow with concern, and something close to respect. Edward spoke again. "You need to come with us." Grimmjow looked at him. "No, I don't." Jacob stepped forward. "You don't have a choice." Grimmjow laughed, a sharp, unstable laugh. "Really? I don't have a choice?" Emmett finally stepped forward. "You know what? I've been quiet long enough. You and me, let's see what you can do." The tension hanging in the air was making Seth uneasy. "Do we really have to fight?" he asked. "I mean, he basically did our job for us," Jacob answered immediately. "He has to come with us. He completely destroyed 3 vampires. Vampires don't die like that. And whatever happened to them?" He paused, looking directly at Grimmjow. It looked different. Before things could calm down, Emmett stepped forward. "All right. I've waited long enough. I'm really curious how strong this guy is." Emmett Cullen lunged toward Grimmjow with a speed and force that genuinely surprised him. Emmett threw a straight right punch, powerful enough to split the trunk of a fully grown tree. Grimmjow stopped it with 2 fingers. A small shockwave burst outward from the point of contact. "Interesting." Grimmjow glanced at him. "Your spiritual pressure is incredibly weak, and yet you're almost as fast and strong as an iron car." He paused. "Almost." Edward's eyes widened. "With 2 fingers." He knew exactly how powerful Emmett was, even compared to other vampires. Emmett immediately followed with a kick aimed at Grimmjow's head, but Grimmjow had already disappeared. He appeared to the side and casually shoved Emmett's shoulder. Gentle by Grimmjow's standards. Emmett crashed through 3 trees before finally stopping against a 4th. He stood up, slowly. "What the hell are you?" Then he frowned. "And why does the air feel so heavy around you?" Grimmjow stuck out his tongue and pointed to the number tattooed on his body. "I am Espada number 6. A grin spread across his face. "Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez." Seth and Jacob exchanged looks. "Espada?" Grimmjow looked toward Jacob. "Yeah, this place is interesting. A bunch of people with almost no spiritual pressure, but somehow physically durable." Emmett was already preparing to charge again. For him, things had finally become exciting. But Edward stepped in. "Emmett, stop." Edward looked directly at Grimmjow. "Whatever you are, what you did earlier, the way you destroyed those vampires, it shouldn't be possible." He continued carefully. "A vampire's body is extraordinarily durable. Decapitation is only the first step. That alone shouldn't kill them." He took a breath. "That's why we want you to come with us and talk. We're not trying to use you. We're not trying to imprison you. We're not accusing you of anything." Grimmjow stared at him. Part of him considered killing all of them right now. He could simply force more spiritual power into the dimensional tier, open a proper Garganta, and leave. But this place was interesting, To everyone's surprise, Grimmjow shrugged. "Fine, I'll come," he pointed at Edward. "But if things get boring, I'm leaving." A grin appeared, "And I can't guarantee I won't hit somebody if they become annoying." Emmett laughed. "You know what?" He pointed at Grimmjow. "I kinda like this guy." The pack remained behind to continue patrolling the forest. Before leaving, Jacob stopped beside Edward. "Be careful." His expression was serious. "There's something fundamentally different about him." He paused. "And one more thing. Keep him away from Bella." Jacob glanced toward Grimmjow. The energy coming off him, that pressure, his mere presence could seriously hurt her. Edward nodded immediately. "You can be sure of that." A short while later, inside the Cullen house, Edward, Alice, Emmett, Jasper, and Esme sat facing Grimmjow. Grimmjow was sprawled across the couch, looking thoroughly bored. Finally, he sighed. "Are you all gonna sit there staring at me all night? Or is somebody gonna ask a question?" "We're thinking," Edward replied. Eventually, Alice spoke first. "What exactly are you, Grimmjow?" "You aren't a vampire. You're obviously not a shapeshifter." "Arankar," Grimmjow answered immediately. "Before that, I reached the Vasto Lord stage." He pointed to himself. "Espada number 6. Esme tilted her head. "What is an Arankar?" Grimmjow sighed. "An evolution of a hollow." He began counting on his fingers. "Hollow. Menos. Ajuchas." Then Vasto Lord. "Because of a certain bastard, I became something new. An Arankar." He looked around the room. "You have absolutely no idea what I just said, do you?" Silence. Heavy silence. Finally, Edward spoke. "No." He leaned forward. "Let's start with one question. What is a hollow?" 20 minutes later. The entire Cullen family looked paler than usual, which was impressive. Alice was the first to break the silence. "So you're basically some kind of demon?" Grimmjow shrugged. "No." He thought for a moment. "Although if you wanted a simplified framework based on concepts you're familiar with." "Sure." He leaned back. "I answered your questions. Now you answer mine. You said you're vampires. I watched members of your species trying to eat a human earlier." He narrowed his eyes. "Why were you trying to stop them? Isn't hunting humans your natural instinct?" Emmett clenched his jaw. "It's a choice." "There are other ways." Grimmjow suddenly burst out laughing. He placed a hand over his face. "So you deny your own nature and expect the rest of your species to do the same?" He shook his head. Typical. His grin widened. "You remind me of Ichigo." Alice frowned. "Who's Ichigo?" "My rival," Grimmjow answered. "A human." Suddenly, a knock echoed through the house. Edward froze. "Oh no." His expression immediately changed. "It's Bella." For the first time since arriving in Forks, Grimmjow's eyes widened noticeably. "Who's at the door?" Esme answered. "Bella. A human. She is under our protection." A small smile appeared. "She's family." The moment Esme said her name, Grimmjow felt something different. He slowly stood up. Every member of the Cullen family immediately tensed, muscles locked, eyes focused, ready for anything. Grimmjow continued staring at the front door. Then he spoke. "This woman has a spiritual signature stronger than all of yours combined." Emmett looked personally offended. "What the hell does that mean?" "You saying she's stronger than us?" Grimmjow shook his head. "Not physically." He narrowed his eyes. "Not yet." He paused. "But she could become something extraordinary." Several more knocks hit the door. Then Bella's voice came through from outside. "Edward." Another knock. "There's someone in there with you." Another. "Or something." Silence filled the room. Bella's voice lowered. Open the door. A pause. Then, I can feel it. Grimmjow looked toward Edward and spoke calmly. Let her in. A grin slowly formed on his face. I want to meet her. Esme immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. Outside, Bella continued knocking on the door. More insistently this time. Edward looked directly at Grimmjow. If you hurt her... Grimmjow waved his hand dismissively. Relax. Just keep her at least 10 meters away from me at first. Edward hesitated. Then he opened the door. Bella. His voice was unusually serious. You need to listen to me this time. Bella Swan walked straight inside with her characteristic combination of courage and recklessness. Depending on who was judging, the moment she saw Grimmjow, she froze. Her eyes widened. Goosebumps spread across her skin. Who? She stopped herself, then corrected the question. What are you? Grimmjow smirked. So you're the woman these creatures are protecting. Bella immediately frowned. They aren't creatures, her voice sharpened. They are my family. Fine, Grimmjow shrugged. Whatever you say. Even from across the room, Bella could feel it. Something inside her soul was reacting, struggling, reaching. The tension was immense. She took a step forward. Then another. Every member of the Cullen family immediately noticed. Their expressions changed. Bella, Edward's voice cut through the room. Do not get closer to him. She ignored him. One more step. Then another. Now she stood barely a meter away from Grimmjow, breathing heavily, feeling a crushing pressure pressing against every part of her body. Yet somehow, she remained standing. For the first time, Grimmjow looked genuinely surprised. Oh, he leaned forward slightly. You can stand this close to me without disappearing or passing out? He examined her carefully. With a body this fragile, a grin appeared. You would have impressed me even if you'd only managed to faint. Bella swallowed hard. What is this? She took another breath. Where is this pressure coming from? Her eyes narrowed. Some kind of gift? Grimmjow shook his head. Reiatsu. Spiritual pressure. He studied her for a moment, then added, if you'd been born in Karakura town, you probably would have become an exceptional Shinigami. He paused. What a waste. Edward immediately stepped forward. That's enough, Bella. Move away from him. Bella finally took several steps backward. With each step, the invisible weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. By the time she returned to the others, breathing had become easier again. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, in Italy, the palace of the Volturi stood as it had for centuries, a monument to power, control, and supremacy. At the foot of Aro's throne knelt the female nomad who had escaped Grimmjow earlier. She was giving her report. Aro listened patiently, then reached forward and touched her hand. Immediately, her memories flooded into his mind. He saw the confrontation. He saw Grimmjow. He witnessed the impossible speed, the effortless executions, the strange black-clad figure who had appeared from nowhere. More importantly, he felt what she had felt. The pressure, the overwhelming presence, the instinctive certainty that resistance was meaningless. For a brief moment, Aro's smile disappeared. Then it returned, wider than before. Interesting. The throne room fell silent. Even the other Volturi members noticed the change in his expression. Aro slowly leaned back into his throne, still smiling, still thinking. Very interesting. Inside Edward's house, as if the tension wasn't already high enough, Alice's voice added another layer to it. Oh no, she said. Edward immediately turned to her. What did you see? One word left her lips. Volturi. Every already tense expression in the room became even sharper. Grimmjow noticed the shift in atmosphere. "Who are those guys?" he asked. Edward answered. "The supreme authority of vampires. Ancient, powerful, extremely strict when it comes to potential threats." He glanced toward Bella. "Bella, if the Volturi come, I need to keep you safe." Grimmjow suddenly burst out laughing, completely unconcerned that everyone was staring at him. "What kind of romantic soap opera did I just walk into?" He smirked. "This is just like when Ichigo came to Hueco Mundo for Inoue." He tilted his head. "So tell me, kid with fangs, can you actually stand up to your own authorities? Are you really going to fight vampires far stronger than you?" Edward looked at him seriously. "I have done it before. I will do it again." Alice nodded. "So will I," Emmett added. "We're a family. If they want Bella, they'll have to go through us." The others all agreed silently. Grimmjow looked slightly surprised. "You're just like them. The ones from my world." Edward didn't know who he meant, but Grimmjow was thinking about Ichigo, about how he had stormed into Hueco Mundo, completely unprepared to save Inoue, about the battles that followed, about how Ichigo defeated Ulquiorra, and in that moment, Grimmjow made a decision. He looked at Edward. "If they get in my way, I'll stop them. But don't get it wrong. I'm not your ally. I'm just a, let's say, visitor who decided to stay a little longer," Emmett interrupted. "Why don't you leave? If you can, why would you stay in a situation where you might have to face an unknown, powerful enemy?" Grimmjow barely needed a second to answer. "Because this dynamic between you is interesting." He smirked. "I'm actually curious whether you'll surprise me the same way someone from my world did." Esme spoke directly to him. "At some point in your past, you had people who sacrificed themselves for you." Grimmjow looked at her. "Long ago." His tone made it clear he didn't want to continue. Esme understood immediately and didn't press further. Grimmjow thought about them anyway, the ones who had sacrificed themselves so he could consume them, and rise to the level of Vasto Lord, the ultimate sacrifice that allowed him to reach power. The next day in the evening, after Grimmjow spent the entire day boredly explaining spiritual energy to Edward, about hollows, shinigami, quincies, and the balance of worlds, Alice suddenly appeared. "They're close." Grimmjow stood up and smiled widely. "Then I guess I shouldn't disappoint my new friends." Alice looked at Grimmjow with concern. "Look, I know how strong you are. You might even be stronger than the Volturi, but let me and Edward talk to them first." Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez looked at her and replied calmly, "If they want to fight, we fight. If they want to talk, we talk." "Good," Esme said, having overheard the conversation. Edward Cullen turned to Bella. "Bella, please. Just this once, listen to me and don't follow us." Bella opened her mouth to protest, then looked at Esme, Alice, Emmett, and Grimmjow. She looked back at Edward. "Okay, I understand." The five of them left to meet the Volturi. In Volterra, Italy, inside the ancient palace of the Volturi, Aro, Caius, and Marcus were debating Grimmjow's fate. "We should eliminate him immediately. Fast, efficient, decisive," Caius said coldly. Aro, however, saw opportunity. "Imagine if the Volturi had a weapon like him, someone capable of eliminating vampires with such ease." Caius turned toward Marcus. "And you? What do you think?" Marcus gave a subtle gesture, indifferent. Both options were acceptable. Ever since Didyme's death, he had changed completely. Time had never healed the emptiness she left behind. Edward, Esme, Alice, Emmett, and Grimmjow arrived at the location Alice had foreseen, a clearing deep inside the forest. Grimmjow glanced at Alice. "You know, your abilities could have been useful in my world, too." Alice smiled slightly. "That sounds like a compliment coming from you." Less than 2 minutes after their arrival, figures emerged from the forest. Jane, Dimitri, and Alec. "Volturi," Emmett said, his voice carrying the promise of a fight. Grimmjow smirked. He tilted his head. "They're not just physically different from you," Edward Cullen looked at him. "You mean they also have spiritual energy like you? Like—" He stopped himself. Just the thought of Bella being overheard by the Volturi made him swallow the words immediately. Grimmjow continued. "They're nowhere near my level, and nowhere near hers." He paused. "But compared to you, fundamentally different. In short, you don't stand a chance." Emmett clenched his jaw. "We'll see about that." Dimitri, Jane, and Alec slowly approached the Cullen family and Grimmjow. The Volturi could feel it, the pressure around Grimmjow increasing with every step, but it was still manageable for them. After all, they were the Volturi. Jane was the first to speak. "Alice, Edward, I see you've found a very interesting outsider." Her gaze drifted over Grimmjow. "Interesting outfit. The sword. And that tattoo near your abdomen." A playful smile appeared. "Very chic. Even sexy." Grimmjow glanced at Dimitri and Alec. "Yo," he pointed casually, "which one of you is her father? This kid over here clearly needs a spanking. You should really discipline her properly. Absolute disaster. Total catastrophe." Edward Cullen, Alice Cullen, and Esme Cullen stared at Grimmjow like he had just signed his own death sentence. Only Emmett Cullen managed a grin, terrified but amused, like he had accepted dying would at least be entertaining. Jane's expression shifted completely. Shock, fury, disbelief. "You bastard." Then she smiled again and looked at him. 3 seconds passed. Nothing happened. Grimmjow turned back toward Dimitri and Alec. "Seriously, though, if one of you is her father, do something. She's way too young for this attitude." Jane's smile vanished completely. Even Dimitri, usually composed, looked stunned. "Jane," she whispered, "it's not working." At those words, even the Cullen family felt a chill. Not even Jane's ability worked on him. Alec stepped forward. "Let me handle this." This time, Grimmjow felt it. Something was trying to invade his senses. He turned toward Alec. "It won't work." Alec's expression darkened for the first time in his existence. "What? What do you mean it won't work?" Grimmjow smirked. "You're trying to disrupt my senses. A useful ability. Actually quite effective." He paused. "But," Alec shouted. "But what?" Grimmjow's grin widened. "If the user didn't have such pathetic spiritual energy." Alec went silent. For the first time in his life, something inside him cracked. Dimitri placed a hand on Alec's shoulder, steadying him. Alec immediately regained control. Dimitri spoke calmly. "One more test." In the next instant, Dimitri charged. Fast, precise, efficient. At 10 meters away, he already felt it, his body becoming heavier. But he didn't slow down. Grimmjow didn't move. He allowed Dimitri to come closer. Then, Dimitri struck him, a punch powerful enough to shatter 2 trees at once. The impact should have sent Grimmjow flying, should have torn his body apart, but nothing happened. Dimitri's fist was pressed against Grimmjow's ribs. Not a single inch of movement. Grimmjow looked at him. "Disappear." He slapped him. Dimitri was launched through 12 trees, his face cracking the forest as he flew. Alec immediately rushed toward him. Jane remained frozen, furious and shocked. She looked back and forth between Dimitri and Grimmjow, over and over. Grimmjow finally spoke, smiling softly, a mocking, almost parental grin. "It's okay, little girl. I don't want to hurt you. Your friend is fine. Adults just argue sometimes." Emmett Cullen saw everything. He clenched his fist, eyes wide, and for the first time, he thought, "I thought I was strong. I really thought I was." Jane, who had always been cold and sadistically controlled, was now feeling something different: fear, anger, doubt. Among the shattered trees, Dimitri and Alec emerged, both standing on their feet. Edward Cullen spoke quietly. "This isn't over," Dimitri said directly. "Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez. We were sent by Master Aro to test you. I believe the test is complete. Our master extends an invitation. Come to the Volturi Castle." Edward, Alice, Esme, and Emmett stared directly at Grimmjow. Grimmjow answered immediately. "No." Jane was about to attack, but Dimitri placed a hand on her shoulder. Then he spoke again. "One question before we leave. What are you?" Grimmjow smiled darkly. "I am what your world would probably call a demon." Alec spoke calmly. "He's mocking us," Dimitri replied. "Unfortunately, no." He looked at Grimmjow. "We will meet again." The three of them left, carrying a report that would make Aro ask himself over 100 questions, create 1,000 plans, and smile until his face froze in place. Among the trees, Jacob and Seth appeared shortly after the Volturi had left. Less than a minute later, Seth Clearwater spoke. "Well, that went well, didn't it?" Edward replied. "No, they will come back. After Aro sees what happened here, he will only become more curious." He turned to Grimmjow. "You just made the most powerful enemies this world has to offer." Grimmjow smiled darkly. "Natural." Jacob Black looked at Edward. "Are you planning to start a war this close to Forks? This close to Bella?" Esme Cullen said, "I don't think we have a choice. Our new friend has a certain temperament." Emmett Cullen stepped forward. "He's not our friend, Esme. We don't even fully understand what he is." He took a step forward, and what he said next shocked everyone. "Teach me." Grimmjow looked at him, surprised. Emmett was less than a meter away from him, clearly forcing himself to stand that close despite the pressure. Grimmjow asked, "Teach you what?" Emmett spoke clearly. "I heard what you said. You said we have weak spiritual pressure, that we're pathetic. But you never said we have none. If there's a way to become stronger and protect my family, I want to learn it." Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez looked at him and said, "So, I should give humans no chance." Alice Cullen, Esme Cullen, Edward Cullen, Jacob Black, and Seth Clearwater all looked at Grimmjow with heightened attention, as if they were witnessing a historic moment. Emmett Cullen said, "What do you mean? That I'm going to abuse power? That I'll use it to hurt people?" "No," Grimmjow replied. "But what happens if one of the vampires you train, after I get bored and leave, joins the Volturi?" Silence. Everyone turned toward Emmett. The question was valid. If the Volturi learned to use spiritual energy, they could become even stronger than they already were. Grimmjow looked at them and said, "In my world, there were beings like you, at least similar. Bounce, spirit vampires. Theoretically, you could become like them. Extremely powerful for your world, dangerous even in mine." Emmett said, "There has to be a way." Edward Cullen stepped forward. Teach me too. Emmett looked at him in shock. Edward, Jacob Black stepped forward. And me. I need to protect my pack. Grimmjow grabbed his head. Great. Now I've become a babysitter. Emmett Cullen said, the Volturi have always been superior to us, and after you leave it will be the same unless we do something. Alice Cullen added, we don't drink human blood, even though we know it would make us stronger. We're asking for something that balances the situation. Grimmjow smiled. You know what? I'm actually curious what would happen if the power scale shifted a little. Emmett smiled slightly. So, you accept? Grimmjow smiled back darkly. It's going to hurt, Emmett grinned. I didn't expect it not to. When do we start? Now. Here. What followed was a nightmare. Emmett Cullen, Edward Cullen, Alice Cullen, Emmett Cullen, and Jacob Black were placed into a squat position. After 2 minutes, Edward said, a vampire can hold this position for hours. This is nothing. It's just boredom. Grimmjow smiled and stepped forward, releasing spiritual pressure. Instantly, their calm disappeared. Effort appeared. Real effort. Jacob Black felt his muscles burn. His body was different from the vampires, and it reacted differently. The vampires felt crushing pressure on their joints, as if the ground itself was forcing them down. Grimmjow stepped forward again. Emmett Cullen shouted in shock. You've been holding back this entire time. You weren't fighting at full power at all. Grimmjow smiled sadistically. Who said I was? Focus. Jacob was shaking. He couldn't hold it anymore, but he refused to fall. Not before Edward. Grimmjow noticed him. Hey, Alpha Wolf. Jacob answered with difficulty. Yes. Close your eyes. Look inside yourself, the void, the energy that allows you to transform. Now, when your legs are shaking, when you can't stand anymore. Jacob obeyed. For 20 seconds, nothing happened. Then he opened his eyes. They were glowing. A blue tint replaced his usual brown. His legs stopped shaking. Grimmjow nodded. Good. He let Jacob rise and placed him into a meditative stance. Meanwhile, the vampires were still struggling in the squat position, searching for the void inside themselves. But finding nothing, Grimmjow stepped forward again. Maybe you need more pressure. Suddenly, Alice's left leg bone cracked and she collapsed. Emmett Cullen shouted, Alice! Grimmjow snapped, focus. She won't die from that. From the ground, Alice said, I'm fine. Keep going. I'll try again when I recover. Vampire healing meant her bones could regenerate quickly. After about 10 more minutes, only Edward and Emmett remained standing. Edward's bones trembled. Emmett clenched his teeth. Grimmjow said, Now, both of you, close your eyes. Look inside yourselves. Emmett said, It's hunger. Hunger for, Edward added, fearful. Blood. Alice Cullen and Emmett couldn't believe what they were hearing. Grimmjow smiled with the same demonic expression. Let it out, Edward said. What? Emmett said. We fought so hard to suppress it, and you're telling us to release it. You wanted power, Grimmjow said. That's where your power comes from. Your bodies were built to hunt humans. Humans with firearms. Before that, humans with swords and spears. Intelligent prey. If you want to evolve, then you need to awaken the energy that enabled that evolution in the first place and learn to control it. Not suppress it with emotional attachments and goat blood. Edward shouted with absolute determination. No, absolutely not. If I do that, I'll hurt Bella. Jacob opened his eyes from his meditative position and looked toward Grimmjow and the vampires. Grimmjow replied to Edward, Oh, the girl with the absolutely delicious spiritual energy? A sadistic smile spread across his face, a truly malicious one. Maybe I should take care of her myself. Edward and Emmett both turned toward Grimmjow with pure hatred in their eyes. Neither had left their squat position. Their eyes had become red, almost demonic. Grimmjow pushed even harder. What? Didn't I tell you? After I lost my humanity the first time, I became a hollow. He paused, then grinned from ear to ear while releasing even more spiritual pressure. It wouldn't be the first time I consumed a soul. Edward and Emmett couldn't hold back any longer. A transparent crimson energy began flickering around Emmett. Around Edward, a similar aura appeared, also red, but darker, more ominous. Esme's eyes widened. Alice was completely stunned. Even Jacob, who had been the first to sense spiritual energy, realized something had changed. "This is on another level," he said quietly. Grimmjow opened his mouth to say something else, but Edward's fist was already 2 centimeters from his face. Grimmjow blocked. The shock wave from the impact exploded outward. Alice and Esme, standing nearby, were thrown back nearly 2 meters. As Grimmjow slid backward, Edward attacked relentlessly. Punch after punch after punch, at a speed that even Alice and Esme's enhanced vampire senses could no longer track. At the same time, Emmett appeared behind Grimmjow and launched a devastating kick aimed directly at his ribs. Grimmjow spun around instantly. For the first time, genuine surprise appeared on his face. Using Sonido, he vanished and reappeared behind Emmett. Emmett reacted immediately with a spinning forearm strike. Grimmjow blocked it. Edward came in from Grimmjow's left side with a rapid combination of punches. Grimmjow blocked Edward with one hand while simultaneously stopping Emmett with the other. Alice stared in disbelief. "I can't see them. I can't see what's happening." Esme shook her head. "They're fighting, but I can't follow a single movement." Both of them turned toward Jacob. He was the only one capable of tracking the battle. His eyes darted left and right across the battlefield. Esme looked at him. "Jacob, can you actually see them?" Without taking his eyes off the fight, Jacob answered, "Yes." Alice immediately asked, "Well?" Jacob's face had gone pale. Still staring at the battle, he whispered, "I can't take my eyes off this. It's like..." He swallowed. "It's like watching gods fight. Oh God, what have we gotten ourselves into?" Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez widened the distance between himself, Emmett, and Edward, rising into the air. "He can fly," Alice shouted. Emmett Cullen dropped into a crouch. In an instant, he was on the ground, and in the next, he launched himself forward with such force that he carved a 90-centimeter crater into the earth, destroying his shoes in the process. Edward Cullen followed immediately after. Both of them reached Grimmjow at nearly the same time. Grimmjow dodged Emmett's punch, then Edward's kick. Without even looking behind him, he assumed both would fall, but Emmett had grabbed his leg, and Edward had grabbed the other. Grimmjow's eyes widened, both of them, channeling their spiritual energy, slammed themselves downward, dragging Grimmjow with them. "Move," Jacob shouted, shielding Esme Cullen and Alice Cullen with his body. The 3 of them crashed into the ground like a meteor. A minor earthquake shook Forks. In the distance, a massive cloud of dust rose from the explosion. The town went into chaos. Charlie Swan received so many calls it sounded like the president had arrived. Around 100 witnesses reported the explosion and demanded answers. Charlie left to investigate, after first calling Bella and telling her something dangerous was happening in the forest. She tried calling Edward, but he didn't answer. After making sure Esme and Alice were safe, Jacob rushed toward the crater. Through the dust, Grimmjow stood. For the first time since arriving in the Twilight world, he was bleeding, a thin trickle from his lip. Jacob looked at him in shock. "You're bleeding." Grimmjow smiled. "Anything bleeds if you put enough force behind it. Emmett Cullen and Edward Cullen were unconscious, broken ribs, arms bent unnaturally. The spiritual energy they had shown moments earlier was gone." Jacob looked at Grimmjow again. Was it really necessary to threaten Bella? Grimmjow scratched his head. It was the only way to pull them out of their shells. He grinned darkly. And the result was far beyond anything I could have hoped for. Their conversation was interrupted by Jacob's phone. "Bella?" Bella screamed on the other end. "Jacob, thank God you answered. What happened? There was an explosion in your area. Are you okay?" "Edward, Esme, Alice, Emmett." "You?" Jacob answered seriously. "We're alive. Edward and Emmett are unconscious, injured, but they'll recover." Bella shouted. "The Volturi, those bastards, you need to get out of there. Charlie is on his way." Jacob ended the call immediately and turned to Esme and Alice. "We move. Now." Then he looked at Seth. Seth, Clearwater hadn't left. He had watched everything from a distance. Jacob said, "What you saw here today stays between us. Understood?" Seth nodded, shifted into wolf form, and disappeared into the forest. Volturi Castle, Italy. Arrow listened to the first report from Dimitri. "Fascinating," Arrow said. "So our abilities don't work on him?" Dimitri replied. "No, he can sense them. He feels something when we try. He's not immune." He paused, grinding his teeth. "He said our spiritual energy is pathetic. That is why it doesn't work. Because we are weak users, not because the abilities themselves are weak." Oro smiled. "Spiritual energy? I don't need to understand what it is to know he called you weak." Dimitri tightened his grip on the phone. Aro continued. "I await your return. After I see what happened with my own eyes, you will receive new orders," Dimitri confirmed. Arrow ended the call. Caius turned to him. "A failure?" Arrow replied calmly. "No. We've gained valuable information, and we lost no vampires." He paused. "I am certain what I will see will be fascinating." Cullen House Carlisle. Cullen looked at Edward and Emmett's bodies, then at Grimmjow. "Mr. Grimmjow," Carlisle said carefully, "from what Esme told me, your training methods are..." He glanced again at the unconscious bodies. "Questionable." Grimmjow replied, "Yes. I told them it would hurt." Esme looked at Grimmjow and said, "This has gone too far." Grimmjow looked at her and asked, "Weren't you the ones who asked me to train you?" Alice replied, "To train us, not to kill us or turn us into monsters." Grimmjow was already getting irritated. "You know what? If you don't like my methods, we stop." Esme lowered her head. "No, you're right. We need this. We have to become stronger without consuming human blood if we want to be able to defend ourselves against the Volturi." "That's a serious limitation," Grimmjow added. Esme said, "Yes, it is. But what we saw today in Emmett and Edward..." She paused. "It's definitely something even the Volturi leaders might not be able to defeat." The discussion was interrupted by Bella, who burst through the door in panic. When she saw Edward's condition, she almost vomited. "God, what the hell happened?" Esme said. "It's complicated," and looked at Grimmjow. Bella turned toward Grimmjow and said, "You? How dare you?" In shock, Emmett opened his eyes and said weakly, Calm down, Bella, we were training. Bella replied. Training? This doesn't look like training. You look like you got hit by a meteor. Wait a second. She turned to Grimmjow. So you caused the explosion, Esme intervened. Bella, enough. I know you're angry, but Grimmjow only trained us because we asked him to. Bella lowered her head in anger and stormed out of the house. From the forest, Jacob appeared in wolf form, a faint blue light radiating from him. He transformed back into human form, but the energy was still visible. Bella looked at him and blinked twice, but the glow was still there. Jacob said, You can see it too, right, Bella? She replied, Yes, there's some kind of energy coming from you. Something similar to Grimmjow's, but his feels more fundamental and dark. Yours feels more wild but warm. Jacob sat down next to her. Yeah, I can see it clearly now too. Bella turned to him. Do you think he's on our side? Jacob replied. I don't know. He never said he was, but... He paused for a long moment. His presence has already made us stronger. Me, Emmett, Edward. Bella looked at him. I just hope you never change who you are. Jacob looked at her firmly. Never. And if Edward ever loses control, I'll stop him before he hurts you. Bella nodded and smiled. Inside the house, Emmett was already getting up, amazed at how quickly he had recovered. He looked at Grimmjow. The regeneration was fast, but not this fast. Grimmjow replied, Your spiritual energy is already improving your biological advantages. Edward looked at Grimmjow, standing up as well, his expression a mix of respect and judgment for how he had been pushed so far. Alice suddenly started speaking to herself. Oh no. No, 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 no. Edward turned to her. What did you see, Alice? The Volturi will be back in 3 days with a direct offer for Grimmjow, she said. What kind of offer? Edward asked. I don't know. But knowing them, it won't be anything good, Grimmjow smirked. Arrogant bastards. They probably want a few more slaps. Esme looked at him and said, You need to understand something. Aro can see memories and experience the emotions of anyone you've been in contact with. If, after seeing everything, he still decides to attack, it means he is absolutely certain he can win. Grimmjow smiled like a maniac. Good thing I didn't show them even close to everything yet. Esme and Alice exchanged looks. Edward stepped outside the house and saw Jacob and Bella sitting on the grass talking. He sat down next to them. Bella didn't look at him. She was still too angry about seeing him in that condition. Edward looked at her and said, I did it for you, Bella. You can't treat me like this. Bella replied, You want to do something for me. Then stop bending up with your arms and legs separated from your body. The next day, Grimmjow was walking through the forest. He would have liked to go into town, but no matter how much he tried to suppress his spiritual energy, anyone who came within 1 meter of him would experience vomiting, headaches, or even fainting. If he had gone into town, he was certain he couldn't avoid 1 or more incidents. So instead, he chose to walk through the forest, hoping that some annoying wandering vampires, or another threat, would show up to relieve his boredom. He left the Cullens to meditate. Edward and Emmett tried to reproduce the energy they had activated the previous day, but they could only maintain it for 3.4 seconds, far less than during their fight with Grimmjow. As if summoned by Grimmjow's burning desire, a large group of 10 nomadic vampires appeared in front of him. One of them, named Carnago, was more massive than the others. Carnago said, Well, 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 look what we have here. A lost cosplayer. Grimmjow smiled at them like a psychopath. Carnago turned to the others, laughing. Look at this bastard, he's really committed to the role. Another vampire laughed. I almost feel like letting him live. From the forest, Jacob and the pack appeared. Grimmjow, are you okay? Grimmjow couldn't hold it in anymore and started laughing, a laugh that shocked the vampires and some members of Jacob's pack, though not Jacob, who clearly knew Grimmjow's abilities. Grimmjow looked at Jacob and said seriously, "Did you come to ruin my fun, Jacob?" The pack leader looked at him and said, "No, but I'd like to try what you taught me." Grimmjow said, "You see that big one? His name is Kanguro." The nomad leader shouted, "Carnago!" Grimmjow waved it off. "Whatever. You take Kanguro, I'll take the rest." The other shapeshifters exchanged looks. They knew there was a noticeable difference in power between a vampire and a shapeshifter. "Jacob," one of them said, "maybe we should help you." Jacob looked at them, smiled, and said, "Watch and learn." The 9 nomadic vampires looked at Grimmjow. One of them started laughing, and then all of them joined in. "Look at that scary guy with the sword," one said. "What a terrifying smile." Another laughed. "I think he's accepted his fate and wants to die with dignity," another added. "All right, guys, let's stop laughing at our friend," one said as he approached Grimmjow. But when he got within 6 meters, he began to feel pressure. "What the hell?" he said, taking heavier steps. The others noticed. "Hey, is something wrong?" In the next second, they saw their friend's head fall to the ground. They all shouted in shock. "What? What the hell?" one said calmly. "I didn't see anything. I was just looking at his sword." Carnago saw what happened and froze in shock. Jacob shouted at him, "Where are you looking? Your fight is with me." Carnago prepared himself. After 5 seconds, he said, "Are you going to transform or have you frozen from fear?" The wolves exchanged looks. Jacob said, "Against someone like you, transformation won't be necessary. It would be overkill." Carnago laughed. "Your leader is an idiot. Normally, vampires are stronger, so his statement would not be unreasonable." With vampire-like speed, Jacob immediately reached him, shocking the entire pack. He punched Carnago in the face, sending him crashing into a tree. Carnago quickly got up, staring in shock. "How?" he asked angrily. "How can a lower shapeshifter like you hit me like that, without transforming?" Jacob smiled at the pack. Even in transformed form, they were visibly shocked. Jacob attacked again, and he and the nomad leader exchanged rapid blows. It looked like a fight between 2 equally matched vampires, not a vampire and a shapeshifter. For 5 minutes, Jacob kept up with Carnago, blow for blow. The vampire's body began to show cracks. Jacob seemed to be dominating, but eventually the vampire's physical superiority began to show. Jacob started to tire. The spiritual pressure he was using strained his body, which wasn't used to such speed and force. Carnago gained the advantage and kicked Jacob into a tree. Jacob stood up, exhausted, bleeding from his nose and lip. Seth shouted, "Jacob, transform!" But Jacob said, "No." Grimmjow said, "I must surpass my limits." Carnago laughed. "Surpass your limits? You know what? I don't know what training you've had, shapeshifter, but it clearly worked. Still, we vampires don't get tired. I can fight like this forever. But you?" Grimmjow shouted. "Jacob, is this going to take long? I'm starting to get bored." Carnago looked at Grimmjow and froze. All the vampires were already dead, 9 in total. "What the hell is this? How did you do that?" Carnago immediately fled, but Grimmjow appeared beside him in an instant, using Sonido. "Where do you think you're going?" And then he decapitated him. The pack was shocked. Jacob was breathing heavily and suddenly collapsed unconscious. The pack returned to human form, carried their leader, thanked Grimmjow, and left. In the Volturi Palace, Oro held Jane's hand and saw everything that happened. The blow that sent Dimitri flying, his resistance to abilities, that psychopathic smile. Oro's eyes widened. He leaned back and said, "Fascinating. A demon, you say?" Jane said, "He is clearly in a category we don't understand." Oro said, "Yes. But if he is a demon, why is he helping vegetarian vampires?" Jane replied, "Maybe he enjoys the violence that comes from helping them." Oro looked at her with something close to respect. "Possible, but I think he is starting to get attached to them. And if he has attachments, he can be manipulated. And if he can be manipulated, he can become a weapon for us." Oro stood up, a rare gesture for him, and looked at Dimitri. "Go and gather as much information as you can about this spiritual energy. Find anyone who has witnessed it and bring them to me." Then he looked at Jane. "You go with Dimitri. Your gift might be useful to encourage cooperation." Jane smiled sadistically. "Understood." At night, darkness fell over Forks, and in Charlie Swan's office there was a man about 50 years old. He claimed that, from a distance through binoculars in the forest, he saw a strange man with a sword, a half-stone-like mask over part of his face, and blue hair. He described him as a trained man with somewhat attractive features and a height slightly over 6 feet. The man swallowed hard and said, "At one point he looked toward me and smiled." Charlie raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you imagined it. If you were at such a distance, how could he—" "He saw me," the man interrupted. "He definitely knew I was watching him." Shortly after, Charlie was outside in front of the police station, holding a coffee, looking at the cloudy sky. His thoughts were only about the man's testimony. He looked at his phone and called Bella. She was at the Cullen family house and answered, "Hello, Charlie." "Bella, where are you?" "I'm at Edward's. Why?" "Good. I want you not to go into the forest. Tell Edward not to take you there." Bella said, "It's night. We're not going anywhere." "But why?" Charlie replied, "Today, someone told me there's a dangerous individual with blue hair walking around the forest. He has a sword." Bella and all the present members of the Cullen family looked at Grimmjow, but he remained indifferent. Bella said, "Don't worry, Charlie, thanks for telling us." And then she hung up. Esme looked at Grimmjow and said, "Did someone see you?" "Yes, a man with binoculars. He was far away. I looked at him just to make him leave, and he ran off." Emmett put his hand on his head. "Perfect. You showed him you can see him from an impossible distance." Edward said, "It doesn't matter. There have been situations like this before. Nothing will happen." Suddenly, Alice started speaking to herself again. "Not again," Esme asked. "What did you see now, Alice?" She replied, "The Volturi will arrive earlier than I saw before. The future has changed." Grimmjow asked, "When?" Alice said, "Tomorrow. But they are not coming for you." She paused. "Dimitri and Jane will interrogate anyone who saw you." Edward said, "We have each other. The pack and Jacob will protect one another." Esme said, "The man who saw Grimmjow." Typical Grimmjow said, "You know what? These guys are starting to annoy me, and I usually destroy whatever annoys me," Emmett said. "The Volturi will work quietly, They don't want humans to discover vampires, but that doesn't mean they won't cause many victims if you engage them directly. Grimmjow looked at them. You're confusing me with someone who cares. Esme looked at him. We care, Grimmjow said. Anyway, Bella suddenly said, train me. Esme, Emmett, Alice, Edward, all of them opened their eyes wide and looked at Bella. Even Grimmjow couldn't believe it and started laughing. Train you? You're extremely fragile even by human standards, he said, pausing. You don't even have the abilities of an athlete for me to start from, and you want me to train you to fight vampires? He was both shocked and amused, but when he saw Bella's determined expression, he said, You're not joking, she said. You said I have more of that spiritual energy than all of them. They always protected me. I want to fight alongside them. Edward immediately objected. No, Bella, you must stay safe, she shouted. I'm tired of this, Edward. I want to be able to do something, anything, even just to hold a vampire back for 30 seconds. Grimmjow looked at the situation, the panic in Edward, Esme's analytical gaze, Alice's worry, and Emmett's protective instinct. Finally, he said, Okay, we start now. Bella, shocked, said, Now. Grimmjow said, Tomorrow they come, so we start now. Edward stepped forward. His spiritual pressure activated instantly. Under my supervision, he said. Grimmjow waved his hand dismissively. Yeah, White Knight. Time doesn't allow for physical training, Grimmjow said. He paused. In my world, there is a girl, Inoue. She doesn't have much power when it comes to fighting, but her ability is perfect for support. Bella said, Whatever ability you can teach me is perfect. I can't teach you. You already have your own abilities. I'm just helping you discover them. Grimmjow made Bella sit in a meditation position, while Edward watched carefully from about 8 meters away. Grimmjow slightly increased his spiritual pressure, and Bella began to sweat. Focus, Grimmjow said. Access your inner energy. Bella's breathing became heavier and heavier. Grimmjow, power down. Enough, Edward said. Don't you dare interrupt, Edward, Bella shouted. Grimmjow, increase the intensity. Grimmjow smiled like a psychopath. You don't have to tell me twice. He didn't gradually increase the pressure. He doubled it, almost as much as when he trained Edward. Bella felt her soul pulsing. She was about to faint. Edward was panicking, not knowing what to do. Even Emmett started thinking, Is it really okay that we left Bella in the hands of this psychopath? Bella opened her eyes, but not in the Cullen house anymore. She was in a long, dark hallway, its walls made of glass. Behind the glass was the forest of forks, images of Charlie, Edward, the Cullen family, Jacob. And in front of her was herself, but different. Black eyes with orange pupils, veins bulging on her arms and legs. Where am I? Who are you? Bella said. A demonic laugh came from the woman who looked like Bella. Oh, Edward, I was such a fool. Protect me, I'm just a small, scared girl. Save me, Edward. She started laughing even harder. Her laughter released so much energy that it pushed Bella backward. Behind that demonic woman, Bella saw a door emitting a dense, powerful blue energy. Fundamental, overwhelming. Get out of my way, Bella screamed. Half of the demon's face began to form a mask similar to Grimmjow's. The demon laughed. Edward, I'm scared. Who will protect me now? Bella clenched her fist and said, I can protect myself. Back in the Cullen house, a wave of dark energy burst out from Bella. The pressure was so intense that Emmett and Edward could barely stand, while Esme and Alice were pressed against the floor, feeling something crushing them. Grimmjow seemed unaffected. Wow, this is interesting. A demonic scream with an incomprehensible resonance echoed from her. All the windows shattered. Emmett and Edward were thrown into the wall, but immediately got back up. A hollow mask began to slowly form on Bella's face. Edward lunged toward her, but Grimmjow stepped in front of him. "Move out of my way," Edward shouted. "If you stop her now, she'll become a hollow," Grimmjow said. "Why didn't you tell me there was such a risk?" Edward shouted. "Because it wasn't supposed to exist," Grimmjow replied. Emmett clenched his fist. "What the hell does that mean?" Grimmjow kept watching Bella, expression unchanged. In her inner world, Bella was screaming at her hollow and crying, "Disappeared! Get out of my way, why do you have to stand in my way?" The hollow laughed. "Stand in your way, I am you." Bella felt everything slipping away, even her consciousness flickering. Then she looked at the hollow and said, "You're right. You are me." The hollow's smile vanished. "What?" Bella said. "I created you. Every time I was stubborn, but deep down I knew I couldn't do anything. Every time I said I hated being protected, but I knew I needed it. Every time I pretended to be brave, but I was just lying to myself." The hollow's face flickered. "No, that's not possible. You're just a scared woman who depends on others." Bella looked at it and said, "I know, and I'm grateful I had real protectors. And now, I will do the same for them." The demon cracked, literally shattered like glass, looked at Bella one last time, and then vanished into smoke. Bella opened her eyes. A blue light was coming from her entire body, and the hollow mask that had begun forming cracked. Her hair had grown about 20 centimeters longer. Edward's eyes widened. He said quietly, "Grimmjow." "Is that Bella?" Grimmjow replied with his usual macabre smile. "That is the real Bella." The next morning in the forest, Dimitri and Jane were talking to the man who had seen Grimmjow. They told him they were reporters. He repeated exactly what he had told Charlie. And when Dimitri and Jane realized they could get nothing more from him, they decided to kill him. Jane smiled and whispered, "Pain." The man collapsed to the ground, screaming, but the next second Edward, Esme, Emmett, Alice, Grimmjow, and Bella appeared. Grimmjow said, "You're looking for me." Seeing Grimmjow, Jane briefly felt the fear she had experienced at their first encounter, enough to lose control over the man on the ground, who collapsed, breathing heavily from the pain. Dimitri launched a punch toward his head, but in an instant, Emmett was there and blocked it. "You and me," Emmett shouted. Then, with an explosion of spiritual energy, he launched himself with Dimitri through more than 20 trees, leaving behind a path of destruction. Jane's eyes widened as she looked at Emmett. Jane said, "What have you done?" Then she looked at Grimmjow. Grimmjow replied, "I made things more interesting." Bella stepped forward and said, "Leave this to me." Jane began to laugh. "You? Whatever trick you learned, you're still just a human." Bella walked toward Jane, and Jane also moved forward, smiling. When Jane reached 5 meters, Bella activated her spiritual energy, and Jane collapsed to the ground. "Impossible," Jane said, struggling to get up. Jane fell again under the sudden pressure she felt, but she could still stand in front of Bella. Barely. Jane tried to strike Bella, intending to kill her instantly. She saw her hand pass through Bella's body. Blood. And then it was over. After she blinked once more, Bella was no longer there. Bella was flying, literally, standing in the air above Jane's head. Jane looked at her hand, then at Bella. "You, inferior human." Jane jumped toward Bella, but now Bella was in the exact place where Jane had originally attacked, and Jane was back in her original position. Jane said, "Illusions. So now you can create illusions." Jane began to laugh. "What are you going to do? Keep me here until your human body gets tired and falls asleep?" Another Bella appeared behind Jane and touched her shoulder. Jane felt it and turned to strike, but there was no one there. Now only Bella stood in front of her again. Jane felt a hand on her shoulder. She was sure she had felt it. Bella said, "I will give you something. Something you have given everyone until now." Jane immediately understood. She said quietly, "Bella, no. I could have killed you so many times and I didn't." Bella replied, "I won't kill you either. I won't end your life." Before Jane stood no longer Bella, but a copy of Jane with black eyes and a hollow mask and orange pupils. Jane felt fear in that moment. "Bella, is that you?" The demonic figure said, "Pain." Jane began to feel all the pain she had ever inflicted through her power. Her screams were horrific, but no one could hear them. Bella had taken her voice. Now Grimmjow, Esme, Edward, and Alice watched as Jane writhed, pulling her own hair out, seeming to scream, but producing no sound. Alice looked away. Esme, perhaps for the first time in her existence, had her hands clasped as if praying. Edward clenched his fists, eyes wide, staring at Bella as she watched Jane struggle with indifference. Grimmjow said, "Beautiful." "Terrifying," Edward corrected. Emmett walked back along the same trail of destroyed trees he had created and said, "He ran." Edward clenched his fist and said, "Why didn't you chase him?" Emmett replied, "And do what? Kill a Volturi?" Then he looked at Bella and at how Jane was suffering and said, "Bella, I think that's enough." Bella said, "Yes." And then Jane's pain stopped. Jane looked at Emmett, then at Bella and became frightened. She crawled backward on her knees. "You, stay away from me." Bella said, "I don't want to see you in Forks anymore, specifically you. The Volturi can send whoever they want to talk, not us. But if I ever see you again, I will make you go through this for 20 years in 10 minutes. Jane nodded desperately. "I'll disappear. I'm leaving." After that, Jane ran. She didn't just leave. She ran as fast as she could through the forest. Grimmjow began to applaud. "Bravo!" Edward looked at Grimmjow with a mix of gratitude and disgust, then turned to Emmett and said, "Bella has changed." Emmett said, "Edward, Bella is no longer our protected one. She's on the front line now. You'll have to adapt." The day ended without further major events. The man was taken home and placed in his bed, and when he wakes up, he will probably think it was a nightmare. That night in the Volturi Palace, Aro held Dimitri's hand. Aro's expression shifted from curiosity to horror, and then finally to opportunity. Aro said, "Shapeshifters, the Cullen vampires, and now even a human has access to this power." He ordered Dimitri, "Take some vampires with you. Bring me the weakest one, but the most useful." Dimitri immediately understood what he meant. 2 days passed without major events. Grimmjow was already thinking of leaving when suddenly someone entered and interrupted his thoughts. Jacob, sweaty, nervous, alert. Edward asked directly, "What happened?" Jacob said nervously, "They kidnapped Seth." Grimmjow's expression darkened. For the first time, something like concern appeared on his face. "If Aro gets Seth, he'll see your first training." Jacob said, "Not only that, I trained Seth. He has begun to feel spiritual pressure. He's still weak, but Arrow. He didn't finish because Grimmjow completed the thought. Arrow will be able to sense it too, learn it, and eventually adapt, Emmett said. We need to move. Now, Bella said. I'm coming too. Edward wanted to protest, but who would support him now? Bella had become a necessary force on the front line, not someone to be protected. Still, Edward said, Be careful, Bella. Bella smiled. Of course, and you too, Esme said. Then I suppose we're going to Italy. Soon after, Esme, Bella, Edward, Emmett, and Grimmjow arrived in Italy. Grimmjow went on foot using Sonido and coordinates, while the rest flew by plane. He had already learned to suppress his spiritual pressure even further, but on a plane it was still too dangerous. It could have caused an accident without him meaning to. Still, he arrived before them. In Italy, at the Volturi Palace in Volterra, Arrow was meditating, searching for his inner void. He had already seen all of Seth's memories. He felt the spiritual energy. Now he was searching for his own. Arrow saw a sea of blood, all the operations and plans he had made until now. Arrow had not fought anything. He had embraced it all as part of himself. Bella accepted the reality the Hollow had shown her, but rejected its alternatives. Emmett and Edward accepted power through bloodlust, but refused to let it control their actions. Jacob discovered his inner wolf, but learned to become a calculated leader, which is also why he didn't come with them. There were still members of the pack to protect, but Arrow knew exactly who he was. He never fought against his nature. He was a powerful predator, and now he was about to become the strongest of all. Grimmjow was waiting on a dark alley. There was no need to discuss where they would meet. Edward and Emmett were now able to locate him through his spiritual energy. They appeared in front of him, and Grimmjow said, I thought you weren't coming. Then smiled sadistically. Edward said, We absolutely have to stop Arrow before he learns to control spiritual energy. Grimmjow replied, It's already too late for that. From Arrow's throne room, an immense energy erupted. Caius stared with wide eyes open. Thousands of years of life had not prepared him for what he now saw. Even Marcus, at that moment, looked toward Arrow with terror. Arrow's new appearance was terrifying. 2 demonic horns, a Venetian hollow-style mask around his eyes and nose, and an aura exerting pressure that made Caius and Marcus tremble on their thrones. Not only from fear, though that likely existed too, but from the sheer weight, as if the entire world was pressing down on their backs. Suddenly, the wall exploded. Boom! Grimmjow, Edward, Emmett, Esme, and Bella entered the scene. Arrow looked at them with a deep, ancient gaze. Demon, Arrow said politely, I foresaw that you would appear soon. Bella spoke without being asked, as usual. Arrow, what have you done? Now that Arrow could feel spiritual energy, he murmured, Clarity. Finally, clarity. For thousands of years, I thought I understood power and had mastered it, but I always felt a void, the part humans call the soul. Now, he smiled and looked at Bella. I have completed what I was missing. Vampires began to appear, ready to intervene, but Arrow signaled them to stay back. Arrow stepped forward, walking through the air itself, and Emmett's eyes widened. Edward clenched his teeth. With each step, the pressure doubled until Esme collapsed to the ground. Arrow stopped. Oh, am I too close? Esme raised her head and whispered, Arrow, you're going too far. Arrow laughed, intrigued. Too far, you say? Let me ask you something. Why did you come here? Even as vampires, you were nowhere near my level. And now, he paused. My mere presence can kill you, Esme said. Because we are a family, Aro smiled. How beautiful. Family is important, but rules and secrecy come first. After scanning everyone, he added, a new layer has been added to the secret, this soul energy. Then he looked at Edward. Do you understand what this means, Edward? It means the Cullen family, together with Jacob's pack, must disappear. Edward was about to launch himself at Aro, but Grimmjow placed a hand in front of him. You will die, Grimmjow said. Then he stepped forward. Yo, idiot. I also value my secrets and you stole mine. Do you know what that means? Grimmjow smiled like a maniac. It means death. Aro began to laugh. Exactly the opponent I needed to test my power. Aro focused. The spiritual pressure increased even more. Everyone watched in shock except Grimmjow, who observed carefully. Aro's claws grew sharper, like blades. In an instant, Aro was 6 meters away from Grimmjow in the air, and in the next, his claws were 10 centimeters from Grimmjow's head. Grimmjow used Sonido and appeared behind him, but Aro also used Sonido and struck Grimmjow, sending him through 3 castle walls. Grimmjow walked slowly through the rubble and dust, smiling. Ooh, looks like boredom is over. From one of Aro's claws, a purple light formed. Acero. Emmett, Esme, Edward, and Bella widened their eyes in shock. It was not an Oscura Scaro, nor a massive one like Espada or Menos use. But at that moment, it was still shocking power beyond anything they had seen. The Caro shot toward Grimmjow, a purple beam only 30 centimeters wide, yet capable of destroying 2 kilometers of forest in a straight line. Grimmjow caught it in his palm and dispersed it without damaging the castle or the Cullens. Bella tried to invade Aro's mind and create illusions, but he immediately noticed. He snapped his fingers and her power shattered instantly. Bella said, My power is too weak for him. Aro smiled. You are stronger than a normal vampire now, Bella, but not stronger than me. Grimmjow appeared beside Aro and punched him, sending him crashing into the castle wall. You talk too much, Grimmjow said. Fight. Aro rose from the rubble. Caius and Marcus remained seated, struggling to maintain composure. Aro rushed at Grimmjow, but Grimmjow met him halfway with an uppercut that sent him through the ceiling, creating a massive hole. Grimmjow followed. High in the air, Aro regained his stance and blocked a sword strike from Grimmjow. Yes, Grimmjow was taking him seriously now, Aro said. Wait, Grimmjow stopped. What? Aro said. Join me. Grimmjow looked confused. Aro continued. You have no reason to protect the Cullens. You helped them only because it was convenient. We are the same, you and I. We understand our nature. We do not oppose our desires or instincts. He extended a hand. Join me, Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez, and together we will rule this world, and perhaps even yours. Grimmjow listened silently. 10 seconds after the speech ended, he burst out laughing. Not mockingly, but genuinely amused. Aro forced a smile. What's so funny? Grimmjow said. You're exactly like Eisen. You're desperate for absolute power, not for the thrill of battle, or to prove you are the strongest, but because you are afraid of anyone you cannot control. People like you always lose. Aro gritted his teeth. Pity. The fight resumed. Grimmjow became more serious. Aro gave everything. Mini Tero, Sonido, claw strikes. Grimmjow dodged, blocked with his sword, and countered. With every clash, clouds parted and shockwaves hit Volterra. People looked at the sky but saw nothing. Around the castle, humans felt nausea and panic, as if something inside them told them to run. Grimmjow dodged a Kero by spinning and kicked Arrow in the jaw. Arrow grabbed Grimmjow's leg and, using spiritual energy combined with his gift, briefly glimpsed Grimmjow's memories. It was short, but enough to make him step back in shock. Arrow said, "Fascinating. What this energy is truly capable of is far beyond what I imagined. And you are still holding back." Grimmjow replied, "You're not strong enough to force my second form." Arrow answered, "I know. I saw it in your memories. That energy beam you used is called Zero, but it is inferior to what you can truly unleash. Why haven't you vaporized me yet?" Grimmjow smiled darkly. "Isn't it obvious?" "Because you haven't bored me yet," Arrow said. "Show me. I want to see the real difference between us." Grimmjow replied, "All right." A massive surge of wind and pressure rose. 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 6 kilometers. Grind. Pantera! A massive explosion of wind and pressure pushed the clouds away across 4 kilometers. Arrow's expression turned to pure fascination and awe. "Incredible. Absolutely incredible," Grimmjow said. "Now you know the difference between us." Arrow replied, "Much greater than I expected." He was breathing heavily, feeling crushed by the spiritual pressure alone. Grimmjow asked, "Do you want to continue?" Arrow said, "It is pointless." He opened his arms and closed his eyes, waiting for the final strike. Seconds, 10, 20. Nothing happened. Arrow opened his eyes. "Why don't you finish me?" Grimmjow said, "This isn't my fight. The ones who will stop you are down there." He opened a garganta. Arrow looked at it with shock, fascination, and sadness. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "Yes, but I will return." "When?" "I don't know, but when I do, I want to see how they've evolved. Bella, Edward, Emmett, Jacob, and you, Arrow." He stepped into the portal. The garganta closed. The sky returned to normal, but not the normal before the storm. The Cullens returned to Forks. Life continued, but changed forever. New threats appeared. Political games continued, but more subtly. Arrow, now more powerful, became less cruel in a strange way. Bella trained. Edward adapted. Emmett became considered the strongest vampire after Arrow Kresme waited every night, looking at the sky, hoping Grimmjow would return. Carlyle raised a glass one evening to Grimmjow. "Because of him, I learned that vampires have souls. And so, two worlds that were never meant to meet had collided. In Karakura, Ichigo sat on a rooftop with Grimmjow under the moon. "You've changed, Grimmjow," Ichigo said. "Shut up," Grimmjow replied. In the Volturi castle, Arrow analyzed everything, searching for even more power. From meditation, he opened his eyes and said, "We will meet again